Marvel's Avengers devalues the Avengers as a pop culture brand. Developed by Tomb Raider developer Crystal Dynamics and published by Square Enix, Marvel's Avengers took everything great and exciting about Marvel and the Avengers IP, which are both the most financially successful and audience-pleasing pop cultural genre property since Star Wars, and made a dull and drab live service game that's poorly designed, miserable to play, and is just an all-around confused mess. The game tries to be so many things that all undermine each other. On the one hand, Marvel's Avengers tries to be a story-based experience with an original narrative and a unique take on Earth's best superhero team-up that isn't the Justice League. But on the other hand, Marvel's Avengers is live service nonsense. It is filled with various character upgrade paths, loot systems, a premium currency, overwhelming and confusing menu systems, and repetitive missions designed for cooperative play rather than a focused single-player campaign, which are all game design elements that are often contradictory of each other. Kind of like a college English major who doesn't know what the hell they want to do as an adult. Been there. Marvel's Avengers lacks focus. It is a scattershot hodgepodge of disparate gameplay elements that do not mesh well together. Consider it Marvel's clusterfuck, if you will. It's an all-around frustrating video game experience that tries to be a narrative-driven game that is also a AAA live service multiplayer title. But the problem is, it excels at neither. Marvel's Avengers tries to be everything while satisfying nothing. This is frustrating because Marvel's Avengers contains a few positive qualities buried beneath all of its bullshit. In fact, Marvel's Avengers is at its best when it ignores its online live service multiplayer nature and just focuses on the damn narrative. The plot follows the Avengers, with this incarnation consisting of Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Black Widow, and the Hulk as they navigate through a major world-changing crisis. When an unknown group of enemies attack an official Avengers convention, a dangerous substance inside the SHIELD helicarrier breaks containment, destroys San Francisco faster than the speed of capitalism, and infects many of the convention's attendees as well as the citizens of San Francisco. Some infected people die, while others gain superpowers, people who are then referred to as Inhumans. In response to this tragedy, the world blamed the Avengers, and as a result, the Avengers and SHIELD disbanded and retired in disgrace, slinking into the margins of society for years as upcoming corporation AIM takes the reins on being the world police and discriminates against and imprisons superpowered Inhumans on sight. With this new status quo in place, the world moved on from the Avengers. Everyone left the Avengers behind like yesterday's news or the Chicago Bulls after Michael Jordan left. Everyone, with the exception of Kamala Khan. After the events of A-Day, and yes, it's a stupid name, but let's move on, Avengers superfan and Inhuman Kamala Khan discovers that Earth's mightiest heroes may have been framed. A-Day might not actually be their fault. And due to these circumstances, Kamala Khan sets out to reform the team in order to defeat an increasingly villainous AIM and its leader, Dr. Tarleton. No relation. This plot admittedly could have been a great foundation for a story-driven Avengers game. Marvel's Avengers has a lot going for it. It is based on a beloved IP. Kamala Khan is a great main character, both in how her adoration of Marvel heroes is relatable and in how she's a great representation of a Muslim American woman, which is something that the video game industry has historically been pretty bad at, to be perfectly honest with you. There's the fact that you actually play as the Avengers, even if they do look like bizarre world facsimiles of their MCU counterparts. All the playable characters are fun and controlled differently, and the base brawler gameplay is solid enough. But with that being said, every positive aspect of Marvel's Avengers is diluted by bad game design choices and bad creative decisions. For starters, much of the game is online and has a ton of unforgivably long loading screens as a result. Even if you are playing solo, Marvel's Avengers requires you to enter a lobby and wait through a hair-pullingly bad lengthy load screen that kills the pace of the story and the gameplay. Like seriously, waiting for a match to start, even in solo play, takes several minutes. There is a lot of waiting around in Marvel's Avengers, and to make matters worse, many levels feature a mid-level loading screen in the form of a long elevator ride, as if it were Mass Effect 1. And if the developers took inspirational cues from a janky 13-year-old game, even if that said janky 13-year-old game is good, then Marvel's Avengers is right and properly f***ed. Sadly, this diagnosis is reflected in the level design. In fact, Marvel's Avengers really goes to Schittsburg once you enter actual gameplay. Even though the brawler-style melee combat is solid and all of the different playable characters and playstyles are cool, the levels themselves are repetitive as hell. Basically, the player constantly fights the same damn base enemy types in an openish arena where Jarvis Doley tells you where the next objective is, over and over again. Once there, you need to complete simplistic objectives like defend an area from a group of those said basic enemy types, destroy power reactors, and repeatedly fighting giant robot spider bosses. Because God forbid that Crystal Dynamics create really cool and unique boss battles based on a whole comic book universe's worth of memorable supervillains when we can just repeatedly battle against giant robot spider bosses over and over and over again. What is this, Wild Wild West? Marvel's Avengers is a drag and transforms this really fun and exciting IP into an absolute bore fest on par with Anthem. Leveling up your various characters is a chore. While each character having their own specific skill tree with unique upgrades is fine in theory, Marvel's Avengers upgrades are doled out at a ludicrously slow pace to the point that many players will barely make a dent in upgrading these characters by the time the credits roll. It is a baffling form of level design that makes the game incredibly unrewarding to play long term and caused me to just not want to come back to it and keep playing it. It's bad and does not give the player constant positive feedback like other better games in this genre. And as fucked up as this is going to sound, this is a deliberate design decision by Crystal Dynamics. After all, Marvel's Avengers is an online live service game that desires for players to return to it long term and doesn't want players to stop spending time with the game. In theory, pacing out the leveling system to take many hours longer than it actually takes to complete the main story makes sense because that gives players a reason to keep logging in to do weekly challenges and missions. But in practice, Marvel's Avengers is not fun to play. Marvel's Avengers isn't worth spending any time on because Crystal Dynamics made this game to be unrewarding by choice. It is just yet another miserable live service. The cumbersome menu systems best exemplify this sentiment. Whether it is the character's skill trees, disposable cosmetics that add nothing of value to the gameplay or the character's appearance, premium character-specific costumes and emotes doled out in an unrewarding manner, the premium currency in the in-game storefront, and etc., the menus and the overwhelming amount of options and visual stimulants are off-putting and further break up the pace of the game, which, as stated before, is already a problem. The menu system is just such a damn eyesore to look at, and like many other aspects of Marvel's Avengers, it worsens the overall experience. By the end, Marvel's Avengers is a lifeless, dreary, and unsatisfying video game experience all around. Even though the brawler gameplay is solid and the narrative, when given proper focus, contains some high points, the rest of Marvel's Avengers' untasteful qualities dilute every single one of the game's positive attributes. Marvel's Avengers becomes repetitive, poorly paced, and its aspiration to be the next Destiny or Apex Legends would even make a cynic out of Captain America. Marvel's Avengers is a live service built to, in theory, last for years with promised updates, weekly challenges, DLC characters, season passes, and a revolving storefront. But in actuality, Marvel's Avengers is not a game that is worth playing now. In the movies and comics, the Avengers might be the greatest of all superhero team-ups, but in Marvel's Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes are transformed into Earth's mightiest dud. And with that, that was the video. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like rating and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell icon to get notified whenever I drop a new video. And leave a comment telling me what you think about Marvel's Avengers. Also, I have a link to my Patreon in the description. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my high tier patrons, Slasher Avails, Mom, and David Devlin. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.